Welcome to the World Today on Channels Television. I'm Cynthia Araya. Here are our top stories. World leaders have extended the deadline for an Iran nuclear deal till the end of June after talks in Vienna failed to reach a comprehensive agreement. The UK Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond said although good progress had been made, getting an agreement by the original deadline was not possible. 6 world powers want Iran to curb its nuclear program in return for the lifting of sanctions. Tehran says it's not seeking nuclear weapons, but wants atomic energy. The 6 countries, that's the United States, the United Kingdom, Russia, China, France and Germany, have been in negotiations with Iran to finalize a preliminary deal reached last year in Geneva.
There seemed not to be enough time for world leaders to come to an agreement over Iran's nuclear program. The Chinese representatives involved in negotiations on Iran's nuclear program is of the opinion that talks may need to be extended as time is running out for a deal to be struck before Monday's deadline.
There have been some new ideas and suggestions during the talks. The deadline of this round of negotiations is Monday, considering that some issues are complex and important, and I think more time may be needed.
On Sunday evening, Britain's Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond believes although getting a deal seemed to be a major focus, false hope should not be raised.
We're all focused on trying to get to a deal, but I wouldn't want to give any false hopes here. We're still quite a long way apart, and there are some very tough and complex issues to deal with, but we're all focused right now on trying to get that deal done. Well, look, at the moment we're focused on the last push, big push tomorrow morning to try and get this across the line. Of course, if we're not able to do it, we'll then look at where we go from there. But at the moment everybody's talking about how we are going to try and bridge that gap and move things forward tomorrow with the Iranians.
U.S. official and U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Zarif discussed the possible extension. The talks are aimed for a deal that could transform the Middle East, but without it, the U.S. and Iran are destined to remain enemies. The cost of failure to reach a deal could be high. Iran's regional foe, Israel and Saudi Arabia, are watching the talks nervously. Both fear a weak deal could encourage Iran to become a threshold nuclear weapon state, something Israel says it will never allow.
For more of the Iran nuclear deal, I'm now being joined live via Skype by the VOA State Department correspondent Scott Stearns. He's speaking to us from Washington, D.C. Scott, thank you so much for joining us on The World Today.
Sure thing.
Now, why is it so difficult for the P5+1 nations to reach a deal with Iran on its nuclear program?
The problem, like in many deals, is in the details. There are questions about the number of centrifuges that Iran would be able to maintain as part of this deal. The P5+1 are talking about several thousand, 4,000 centrifuges, perhaps. The Iranian number is closer to 19,000, so that's obviously a big issue. There's also some division over the purity of uranium that Iran would be able to enrich as part of this deal, and then on the other side, what sanctions would be eased when, what would be the time frame for rolling back some of those economic sanctions, which is what has motivated Iran to get to these talks. You know, throughout this process, P5+1 foreign ministers have taken to saying no deal is better than a bad deal. It appears that in Vienna, no deal but continuing talks is clearly better than having those talks collapse, as there has been some progress, as you heard from foreign ministers today, and they are hopeful that they can work out these details by the spring.
Secret that many countries have nuclear programs, but why is there so much worry about Iran?
What the United States says is that it has no problem with Iran having a civilian nuclear power program. So what makes Iran different is that the government in Tehran has not complied with the IAEA inspection norms that some of the other, that all of the other nuclear powers agree to. There's also, of course, the regional political security issues. U.S. allies Israel, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia are quite concerned that Iran's supposed civilian nuclear program is actually a cover for an effort to build an atomic device. So what the P5+1 officials have been saying is it's easy for Tehran to convince the world that its nuclear program is for peaceful civilian purposes if it wants to do so. Part of this deal is setting up the conditions, the framework that would allow that to happen, while at the same time having inspections that would suffice.
We do apologize. We seem to have lost connection with Scott Stearns, the VOA State Department correspondent. We'll try to reconnect with him as we go on in the program. But for now, a 30-year-old woman has been charged with attempted murder by the Australian police for abandoning her newborn baby in a drain in Western Sydney. They say the baby boy, who survived up to 5 days down the drain, is in a serious but stable condition. A group of cyclists discovered him at 8 feet down the pit. The baby is currently receiving treatment at Sydney's Westmead Children's Hospital.
Found a newborn baby in a drain near a motorway in Sydney, Australia. David Otter was cycling with his daughter Hayley on a bike track near the M7 motorway in Sydney's west when two men stopped them and said they could hear a noise coming from a drain.
Kitten or something like that, and it was only when we went down there and had a real good look at it that we could hear exactly what it was.
Police were called and the concrete cover was lifted to reveal the baby lying at the bottom of the 2.5-meter deep drain.
The baby was conscious and breathing. He was removed from the drain and placed in the care of the police.
Police said that the baby was around 2 or 3 days old.
It would appear by the stripe blanket is similar to what is wrapped in babies in hospitals. I can also say the umbilical cord had been cut and had been clamped, so it appears to have some sort of medical intervention since its birth.
The baby is in Westmead Children's Hospital in serious but stable condition and suffering from dehydration, Australian media reported. The Australian police have arrested and charged the 30-year-old mother with attempted murder.
Now we've been able to reconnect with Scott Stearns, the VOA State Department correspondent, who was telling us more about the Iran nuclear deal. Scott, thank you so much for staying with us. Well, finally, before I let you go, how optimistic are you concerning the fact that a deal could be reached by next June, and what are the possible outcomes from the negotiation if it happens?
Well, while the issues that divide the sides are significant, as we discussed earlier, there has been some progress, certainly over the last 6 months and in the last week, at coming closer to reaching a deal. Both President Obama and the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani realize that time is of the essence. Each are under some political pressure at home from more conservative members of their governments that oppose such a deal, so they both feel, I believe, that this is a window that has some limited availability, and the hope, certainly in Vienna today, is that given a few more months, they will be able to reach, hammer out those details that would allow there to be a good deal as opposed to a bad deal or no deal.
Scott, thank you so much for speaking with us again on The World Today. We appreciate your time.
Sure thing.
Now to other news. A police officer has killed a 12-year-old boy identified as Tamir Rice in the city of Cleveland after thinking the gun he was carrying was real. Cleveland's Deputy Police Chief Ed Tomber said that one of the officers fired 2 shots at the boy when he failed to obey an order to raise his hands. A 911 call reported that the boy was scaring people with a gun, but added that he was not sure the gun was real. One of the officers was in his first year on the local force, while the other had more than 10 years of experience.
In rather bizarre circumstances, a police officer has shot and killed a 12-year-old boy.
The child, identified as Tamir Rice, had waved and pointed a pellet gun at the officer at a Cleveland City Recreation Center when he was shot. The boy later died of injuries on Sunday. According to the recording of a 911 call, a witness at the recreation park told the police dispatcher that he saw somebody with a pistol and he was pointing it at people. He added that the gun was probably fake but was scaring people. Officers responded and advised the boy to raise his hands, according to a police statement that said, quote, "The suspect did not comply with the officer's orders and reached to his waistband for the gun. Shots were fired and the suspect was struck in the torso," end of quote. After a preliminary investigation, authorities said the gun the boy had was an airsoft-type replica gun resembling a semi-automatic pistol. Airsoft weapons are realistic-looking guns used in play combat, and they shoot plastic pellets. Most are made with bright orange tips so that they won't be confused with real guns. Police said the orange safety indicator was removed from the replica gun the boy was holding. The two officers involved in the incident have been placed on administrative leave. Only recently, the police shot and killed Michael Brown and other unarmed black teens, which has led to low-level protests in Ferguson, Missouri for a fourth straight night. A grand jury is expected to return a decision on whether to charge the white policeman who shot and killed an unarmed black teen this summer.
This is what democracy looks like.
Brittany Farrell, a marcher and community activist, said she was prepared for the grand jury decision.
We ready for whatever happens. Like we have to build ourselves as a community. We're going to make sure that we continue to fight against this injustice against black and brown people.
Hundreds of peaceful protesters in St. Louis marched in the rain to call for justice in the shooting and killing of Michael Brown and other unarmed black teens.
We'll take a break now in the world today. When we come back, after less than 2 years as America's Defense Secretary, Chuck Hagel is set to resign.